The setup, the invitation came with polite words and warm smiles. Bill Maher's producers called it a historic conversation, a special TV episode meant to connect generations, ideas, and cultures. They said Clint Eastwood was the perfect guest, an icon, a living legend. But behind the scenes, the truth was very different. In the control room, producers whispered to each other. Maher had been struggling with ratings for months. Younger viewers were drifting. Older fans wanted more fire. Someone suggested bringing in Eastwood give the audience a moment to cheer or jeer. Maher didn't hesitate. "Let's do it," he said with a grin. "Let's bring in the cowboy and shake the dust off him." To Maher, Clint Eastwood was outdated. A relic of a time long gone. A man of the Reagan years, hard, stubborn, slow to change. Maher planned to press him on politics, gender, and war. He wanted fireworks. He wanted Eastwood to snap, to fumble, to look weak. But Clint Eastwood had been in this game too long. When Clint got the invitation, he didn't speak much, sat quietly in his study, the late sun falling across his desk. He read the email twice, then nodded once to himself. He had no interest in fighting. But if there was a chance to say something real, he'd take it. He never cared much for talk shows, but this one felt ... different, and he could feel it in his bones. Something was coming. 3 days before the interview, something strange happened. At his front gate in Carmel, a small, unmarked package arrived. No return address, no note. Just his name, printed neatly. Inside was a folder, thick, heavy, old. On the front, in faded red ink, it read, "Geneva, 1989." Clint opened it slowly. There were photographs, grainy, black and white. Few were of men in military suits. One looked familiar. Another photo showed a hotel room, the door slightly ajar, someone's leg caught in motion. Below, it was a typewritten transcript. A conversation. Names, dates, location. One name popped out more than the others. William J. Maher, and then the note, clipped to the last page. It was short, just a single line. "If he pushes, push back." Clint sat back in his chair. The folder in his lap, he didn't blink. He didn't ask why or how. He didn't need to. Something had been buried. Something ugly. And someone didn't want it forgotten. He read everything twice. He folded the pages carefully, put them back into the folder, and slid it into his leather jacket's inner pocket. He said nothing to anyone. The night before the show, Maher's team met in a sleek, glass-walled room. The script was finalized. The segment plan had notes like Clint on toxic masculinity, ask about Trump support, challenge his, war movie politics. They planned to press hard, catch him off guard. They didn't know Clint had already seen the playbook. And something more. The day of the show, the studio was buzzing. Eastwood arrived an hour early, walking slowly, but with purpose. His face unreadable. The makeup team offered powder. He declined. A young intern offered coffee. He nodded and said, "Black." Maher arrived with his usual swagger. Loud, joking with the crew. "Got the legend here tonight." He laughed. Let's see if he remembers what year it is. As the cameras rolled and the crowd cheered, the lights hit hard. The stage was set. Clint sat calmly across from Maher. The conversation started light. Old films. Dirty Harry, spaghetti westerns. The audience laughed. Maher smiled politely. But then his eyes sharpened. "You've been called a man of old America," Maher said. "A time of guns, grit, and, well, not a lot of emotional intelligence." Clint's eyes narrowed slightly. Maher leaned in. "Some people say your movies glorify war, that you're part of the problem." A pause. Clint didn't move. Then he reached into his jacket and placed the folder on the table between them. The audience shifted in their seats. The cameras zoomed slightly. Maher blinked. "That?" he asked, trying to keep his voice light. Clint's voice was quiet, steady. "You know what it is?" Maher gave a short laugh. No, really, Clint. What's Geneva 1989? For a moment, there was silence, the kind that stretches too long. That tightens your chest. Clint leaned forward. I don't start fights, Bill. Never did, but I finish them. Mars smiled, trying to recover. This isn't a fight, Clint. It's just a conversation. Good, Clint said. Then let's talk about Geneva. You were there, weren't you? Mars' smile faded slightly. That's ridiculous. Clint opened the folder. He didn't need to read. He already knew the pages. He slid one toward Maher, a photo. Two men in a hallway. One of them unmistakably young Maher. Mars. Jaw tightened. He reached for a glass of water. His hand shook slightly. I was a different person, he said quietly. We all were, Clint replied. But some things don't go away just because you act like they never happened. The studio was silent now. No one breathed. Even the crew forgot to blink. Mars straightened. You think you can come on my show and I didn't bring the folder? Clint said. Someone sent it. Maybe they wanted to remind you. Maybe they knew you'd come at me. Maher looked down at the folder, then back up. You want to destroy me? Clint shook his head. I don't care about that. But if you push ... I will push back. Another long pause. Maher looked into the camera. We'll be right back after this break. The screen faded to black. But the story was just beginning. The crack begins. The studio went dark for the commercial break. But the tension didn't fade. Crew members moved like ghosts, unsure whether to look at Clint or Maher. No one spoke. No one dared. Bill Maher sat frozen, his fingers tapping lightly on the desk. The folder still sat between them, plain, silent, dangerous. He hadn't expected this. Clint Eastwood was supposed to be an easy target, slow, conservative, stubborn. Instead, the old man had come loaded with something ... sharp, something real. Clint remained calm. His hands rested on his knees, his eyes fixed ahead. For him, this wasn't a game. It was memory, a warning. A line that Maher had crossed without knowing. What the hell is in that folder? Whispered a producer into Maher's earpiece. We've got 10 seconds. Wrap this up clean, smile. Pivot. Maher blinked, nodded faintly, and forced a grin. The stage lights returned. The cameras rolled. And we're back, Maher said with forced charm. Just a little dramatic tension here, folks. The audience laughed, but it was nervous laughter. So Clint, Maher continued, trying to steer the ship. You've clearly done your homework. Geneva, 1989, ... That's a deep cut. Oh, maybe. Too deep? Is this where we're going now? Spy games and dusty secrets? Clint didn't smile. You've brought me here to talk about truth, legacy, right? Maher shifted. Sure. Then let's be honest, Clint said. You weren't a comedian back then. You were ... in something else. Something dirty. The audience gasped softly. Maher's eyes darted toward the producers. No help came. I was young, Maher said finally. Yeah, I was at Geneva. I was part of a delegation, just a writer. I wasn't important. Clint reached into the folder and pulled out the transcript. You met with an intelligence officer. You talked about using media, scripts, headlines. You offered ideas, ways to push public opinion, shape fear. It was the Cold War, Maher snapped. Everyone was playing both sides. Clint looked at him steadily. Not everyone. The crowd was silent again. You could hear the buzz of the lights above them. Okay, Maher said, leaning back, voice louder. Let's say this is true. What do you want me to do? Apologize for something that happened 36 years ago. I don't want anything, Clint said. I just don't like bullies hiding behind jokes. That hit. The crowd stirred. A few clapped in cheer slow. Bill's face tightened. You're making this personal. Clint nodded once. It is personal. You invited me to tear me down. I came ready. The tension cracked again, this time louder. Somewhere in the control room, a junior producer yelled, We're trending. Twitters. On fire. Don't cut it. Maher was sweating now, barely hiding it. His confidence wavered. So you're just another conspiracy guy now. You believe everything someone mails you? I believe what I've lived, Clint said. Maher looked straight into the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, Clint Eastwood, hero, actor, and now, truth seeker. The sarcasm was thick. The audience didn't laugh, but Clint didn't flinch. He slowly stood up, not rushed, not dramatic, just calm and firm. He reached down, took the folder, and placed it gently on Maher's desk. Keep it, he said. Read it again, Bill. All of it. Then decide who you want to be. With that, he walked off the stage. No security, no producer stopped him. The camera stayed live, unsure what to do. Maher sat alone now, folder in front of him, eyes distant. We'll be back, he muttered. Cut to black. In the hallway backstage, Clint moved through. The shadows, past confused interns and whispering staff. A voice called after him one of the producers. Mr. Eastwood, what just happened? Clint paused. The truth, he said, happened. Outside, the night air was cool. A black car waited at the curb. He got in without a word and disappeared into the dark. Back inside, Maher sat slumped in his chair as the crew tried to regroup. The folder lay untouched on the desk, but in the upper corner of the studio, someone was already watching the raw footage. A woman in a gray coat with no name tag took quiet notes on a tablet. When a staff member asked who she was, she just smiled and walked away. Something had been set in motion, and it wouldn't stop now. The fallout the next morning, the internet burned like wildfire. Clips from the interview exploded across social media. Some showed Clint Eastwood sliding the folder across the table. Others captured Maher's frozen expression as the word Geneva echoed on live television. Hashtags like #MaherExposed, #Geneva1989, and #EastwoodKnows began trending worldwide. News anchors scrambled for context. Was it real? Was it scripted drama? Had Clint lost his mind, or had Maher been hiding something all along? Maher's PR team rushed to do damage control. It issued a short statement by noon. Bill Maher stands by his decades of work in comedy and political commentary. Any suggestion of past intelligence ties is absurd and offensive. This was a publicity stunt, nothing more. But the world wasn't buying it. Not yet. Independent journalists started digging. They found an old photo, grainy, black and white, from a 1989 diplomatic event in Geneva. A young Maher was in the background, standing beside a U.S. attach with known ties to covert information campaigns. That attach had disappeared in the early 90s. Suddenly, people weren't laughing anymore. In a quiet hotel suite in Washington, D.C., a man named Frederick Langley, former deputy director of an obscure Cold War intelligence groups, at watching the interview replay. He didn't blink as Clint Eastwood's gravel voice said, "You weren't a comedian back then?" Langley turned to the man beside him, much younger, holding a phone that never stopped vibrating. "Activate cleanup," Langley said. The folder was never supposed to surface. "What about Maher?" the aide asked. Langley exhaled. "He just became a liability." Meanwhile, Clint Eastwood was back in Carmel. He walked along the cliffs above the sea, his boots crunching dry earth. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. A deep voice spoke. "You opened the folder. I read it. You weren't supposed to. Maybe you should have mailed it to someone else." A pause. Then the voice said, "There are people who will make sure this disappears." Clint smirked. "Let them try." The call ended. He didn't call anyone back. He didn't post online. He didn't do interviews. But quietly, in a safe hidden inside a wooden cabinet, he placed a flash drive next to the original folder. Then he locked the door. That same night, Maher was visited by two men in dark suits. They didn't give names. No one saw them enter. The building and security footage mysteriously glitched for 4 minutes. When they left, Maher looked shaken. His next show was canceled due to health reasons. On a private group chat, several Hollywood insiders began trading theories. Some said Maher had once been recruited by an old CIA media unit during college. Others whispered about psychological operations tied to foreign policy messaging in the late 80s. Few had proof, but a few had memories. One of them, an aging journalist named Roy Haggerty, began typing a thread that would change everything. I remember Geneva. I saw things. I knew names. Maher wasn't just a writer. He helped shape a story, a narrative, one that steered nations. Within minutes, the post went viral. Within hours, Haggerty's account was suspended. But screenshots spread everywhere. In a safe house outside Baltimore, the woman in the gray coat reviewed files on a secure laptop. She had retrieved every copy of the Geneva folder from a classified archive before sending it to Eastwood. She was the leak. But she wasn't finished. She opened a new file, OP, Nightframe Phase 2, Broadcast Intercept. Then she typed a single line. Eastwood has the original. Do not engage without clearance. She closed the laptop and vanished back into the system. That night, a black SUV parked outside Clint Eastwood's home. Two figures stepped out. They didn't knock. They circled the perimeter with silent steps, checking for cameras. Inside, Clint sat by the fireplace, watching them through an old security feed. He poured himself a drink, then he picked up the landline. He dialed one number. Rang once. Then a voice answered. Female. Steady. You kept it. She asked. I did, Clint said. It's worse than I thought. Good, she replied. It's time. Clint nodded. I'm ready. He hung up, rose slowly, and walked to the door. Outside, the two men froze as the porch light clicked on. The door creaked open. Clint stood tall, the folder once again in his hands. You boys lost? He asked. They said nothing. One of them reached under his coat. Bad move. Clint didn't draw. He didn't need to. The silent red dot from the rooftop landed on the man's forehead before he could move again. The other raised both hands. A voice came through an earpiece. Abort. The men backed away slowly. Clint watched them go. Then he whispered to no one. If they want a war, they picked the wrong cowboy. Far away, in a dark control room deep underground, a senior analyst leaned forward. His screen was filled with maps, timelines, and images from Geneva. 1989. He clicked a button and said, He's forcing our hand. Another voice replied, calm and cold. Then it's time we remind the world what Geneva was really about. And just like that, the game changed. Again, the broadcast that shouldn't have happened, it began quietly. Just after midnight, across a few encrypted journalism forums and whistleblower channels, a strange video file began circulating. No title, no watermark. Just a 36-minute clip labeled G-89_master.mp4. The footage was grainy, filmed on an old analog camera. It showed a small conference room inside the Intercontinental Hotel in Geneva. The date in the bottom corner read June 12, 1989. At the table, 7 men, 4 American, 2 European, 1 Middle Eastern identified. In the background, a younger Bill Maher sat silently, scribbling notes. His voice never entered the room, but his face was visibly alert, focused, and, to some, oddly commanding for a man who was supposed to be a comedy writer on a government scholarship. On screen, the discussion wasn't about peace or culture. It was about narrative control. Specifically, how to use American entertainment to shape perception about foreign enemies, sell war, and redirect public anger away from domestic failures. You can't change policy through politics anymore, one suited man said, but you can change it through stories. We need to plant doubt, blur the lines, distract the masses until they want the illusion more than the truth, said another. Then came a voice off camera. We can do it through satire, disarm them with humor. Mock truth until it becomes forgettable. That voice matched the tone, rhythm, pitch of a 33-year-old Bill Maher. Within an hour of its leak, the video was everywhere. X, Reddit, Telegram, even TikTok. Censored in one place, re-uploaded in 10 more. The internet had its jaws around it, and it wasn't letting go. In a private control room at HBO, a red alert system triggered. A former technician turned whistleblower had fed the tape into the system. For 9 minutes, just before dawn, Maher's old episodes were replaced with static and brief flashes of the Geneva footage. 9 minutes was all it took. By the time security traced the breach, millions had seen it. HBO's legal team went into overdrive. Publicly, they called it a technical malfunction. Privately, they knew better. And in Clint Eastwood's study in Carmel, the old man watched the full broadcast every second. He poured a fresh cup of black coffee. Then he sat back and whispered, "Someone just fired the first real shot. Across the country, in a cluttered apartment in Brooklyn, Roy Haggerty, the retired journalist who had posted about Geneva, was found unconscious on his kitchen floor. A neighbor reported the smell of gas. Police called it an accident. But inside Haggerty's computer, never meant to be found, was a draft of an unpublished memoir, Operation Nightframe. The comedians who weren't. In it, he named Maher too. Other famous television hosts and a late-night producer people who, according to Roy, had been trained to mix humor with manipulation during the Cold War's final years. He even quoted one chilling phrase used during their recruitment. "You're not entertainers, you're instruments." The file was encrypted, but not anymore. Someone leaked it page by page. Back in LA, Maher finally resurfaced. No cameras. No shows. Just a private video message posted to his own website. He looked tired. Rattled. "This is insane," he said. "That video, it's out of context. I was a kid. I was observing. I wasn't running anything." His voice cracked. "Made my career challenging power, not serving it. But if people want a villain, they'll invent one. Then, softer. If Eastwood wants to keep pushing, I'll push back. And I've got more than folders." He ended the message with a quiet, bitter smile. But to many, it didn't look like confidence. It looked like fear. At that same hour, in an underground parking garage in San Francisco, the woman in the gray coat, now using the codename Iris, handed a new envelope to a tech reporter from The Intercept. "Part 2, she whispered. "This one names who funded the Geneva meeting." Inside the envelope was a list of corporations, weapons manufacturers, telecom giants. One global streaming company that hadn't. Existed in 1989, but had been founded by the son of one of the original Geneva delegates. Iris looked the reporter in the eyes. "Release it all, but not at once. Let him squirm." By now, the U.S. intelligence community was on high alert. At Langley, senior analysts debated whether Clint Eastwood was acting alone or if a larger group was moving behind him. Some believed it was just a bitter old man playing a card too late. Others knew better. "Someone gave him that folder," one agent said. "And someone leaked that tape," said another. They pulled up a new file. Echo Fox. The trigger file. Clint Eastwood stood by the window of his study, dawn light creeping across the floor. The ocean beyond was quiet, still, but inside his house, a storm was brewing. The flash drive sat on his desk, unlabeled, simple, black. It held what the woman Iris had called the trigger file, the final piece, the names, the money, the plan. Not just Geneva, not just Maher, the entire structure behind them. Clint hadn't opened it yet. He stared at the drive like it was a loaded gun. On the nearby wall, a television played on mute. Every channel was covering the same story now. The Geneva broadcast. Some called it a hoax. Others were starting to believe. A few brave voices were digging deeper. A knock at the door. Clint turned. It wasn't loud. Just one knock.com. Purposeful. He opened the door slowly. A man stood there, early 40s, sharp eyes, wearing a pressed suit and holding a government badge. "Mr. Eastwood," he said, polite but firm. "Can we speak inside?" "No," Clint replied. The agent looked surprised. "It's about Geneva and your safety." Clint raised an eyebrow. "Your kind never cared about my safety before." "We're not the same kind," the agent said, "and you're about to be targeted." "Already am," Clint said, and closed the door in his face. In Washington, D.C., Iris sat in a small cafe near DuPont Circle. She stirred her coffee without drinking it. A burner phone buzzed beside her. She picked it up. "The files." "Still sealed?" said the voice. "He hasn't released it." Iris responded quietly. "He will. When it's time, time is running out." "Langley's calling for a full sweep. They want him gone." "Iris." She nodded slowly. "They can try." She hung up and opened her laptop. A live feed showed Clint's housecom still. But second window showed movement near his street. A black SUV parked 2 blocks down. Another appeared 5 minutes later. They were closing in. Bill Maher hadn't left his house in 2 days. He paced the same 10 feet across his marble hallway. 3 phones on the table buzzed with constant alerts. Hate mail, threats, demands for answers. He was unraveling. "You want a war?" He muttered to himself, staring at a picture of young him from 1989. "Fine." He went to his private office, locked the door, and opened a locked drawer. Inside was an old briefcase with a single file. It had the same red stamp. Geneva, 1989, confidential. He hadn't looked at it in 20 years. But now, shaking, he opened it. Inside were typed reports from a defunct unit called Echo Division. The original plan, the pilot operation. To plant ideas into sitcoms. Late-night jokes, sketches, slow, subtle cultural shifts. Maher wasn't the leader. He was a pawn, a mouthpiece. A useful one. There was even a memo with a CIA letterhead. Subject: William J. Marasset. Potential: observant, willing, may not understand full scope. His hands trembled. They had used him. Meanwhile, Clint made a decision. He plugged the flash drive into a secure offline laptop. A single folder popped up. Project Nightframe Uncut Archive. There were dozens of files. Internal memos. Names of producers, executives, network owners. Emails from the early 2000s discussing narrative pipelines. How fear could be steered. Laughter weaponized, distraction manufactured. But one file stood out. Trigger_live.bat. A note beside it read, "Execute only when you're ready. This will broadcast across all live feeds linked to our backdoor 7-minute runtime. Untraceable. Unstoppable." Iris Clint sat still. One click, and the whole world would see. But at what cost? Outside, the black SUVs moved. 5 men stepped. Out, tactical gear, silenced weapons. A soft voice came over their coms. "No mess. In and out. Secure the drive. Neutralize if necessary." They surrounded the house. Inside, Clint took one long breath. Then he reached for a small switch. Under the desk hand, old failsafe. He flipped it. Hidden shutters locked over the windows. Steel slid behind the wooden doors. The house turned into a vault. The intruders froze. "Target is fortified," one whispered, "advise." No reply. Clint opened a hidden drawer and pulled out a small black device. Pressed a red button. From across the country, in a hidden server farm owned by Iris's team, a signal fired. The broadcast began. Across American, the world screens flickered. Live morning shows froze mid-sentence. Podcasts dropped. Sports events paused. YouTube streams glitched. Then a black screen. A voice. Clint's voice. "For decades, we were told to laugh, not ask questions." They turned truth into a punchline. They made silence funny. "But now you get to choose." Images appeared. documents, emails, memos, news clips played beside footage from Geneva. Names and faces, dates and lies. 7 minutes of raw, undeniable proof. Across the country, phones lit up. People screamed. People cried. Some just stared. In the cafe, Iris smiled. She whispered to herself, "The trigger's been pulled." At Langley, alarms blared. Analysts scrambled. Someone shouted, "We've lost containment. It's out." But it was too late. The world had seen. And in his study, Clint sat quietly. Outside, the black SUVs began to retreat. Inside, he whispered one word to himself, checkmate. The collapse begins. The world didn't end in fire. It ended in realization. For 7 minutes, Clint Eastwood's voice had spoken across every screen, every speaker, every live feed. Governments couldn't stop it. Networks couldn't cut it. The public couldn't unsee it. By sunrise, everything had changed. Day 1, the denial phase. Major news channels scrambled to contain the fallout. CNN called it a masterful deepfake. Fox said, foreign interference. MSNBC refused to air it at all. But the people weren't listening to anchors anymore. They were listening to each other. Reddit exploded. Hashtags like #NightFrame, #LaughingLie, and #EchoDivision trended globally. TikTok teens explained the broadcast in 15-second bursts, layering in music, memes, and tears. A new thread popped up every second. Did this really happen? Why didn't we know? Was all of it scripted? And underneath it all, one chilling truth echoed everywhere. They used laughter to hide the truth. Day 2, the fracture phase. Maher vanished. His mansion in Beverly Hills stood empty. His staff disappeared. His lawyers refused comment. A drone photo revealed scorch marks near the back exit, burned papers, a smashed hard drive. Clint Eastwood was silent too. No interviews, no statements. But a cryptic message appeared on his rarely used social media. The truth will always outlive the joke. Meanwhile, HBO was subpoenaed. 3 former producers confessed, one on a live stream. She wept as she admitted, "Yes, we were told. To plant ideas, we were told to make war sound funny, to make fear sound smart." Whistleblowers came crawling from the cracks. A former SNL head writer, a late-night booker, a no-attired Pentagon liaison. Each one confirmed parts of the story. Each one dropped a name, a date, a piece. Day 3, the panic phase. Markets shook. Stocks tied to major media empires plummeted. Streaming companies faced mass boycotts. People demanded answers. Protests began outside network headquarters. In LA, someone spray-painted a giant phrase across the gates of a major studio. "We laughed while they lied." In Washington, an emergency congressional hearing was announced. The Cultural War Files, a public reckoning behind closed doors. Intelligence officials weren't just panicking, they were turning on each other. Langley went dark. Hard drives disappeared. Clearance lists were scrubbed. One internal memo simply read, "Operation Nightframe breached. Containment impossible. Prepare for exposure." Day 4, the retaliation phase. At 3:14 a.m., Clint Eastwood's house was hit. A silent black drone flew under radar and launched 2 small projectiles through the roof. The explosion rocked the cliffs of Carmel. Fire crews arrived within minutes, but the house was already gone. News broke before sunrise. Clint Eastwood confirmed dead in mysterious fire. Pundits argued. Some mourned. Others doubted. Within hours, conspiracy threads surged. Survivors swore they saw Eastwood the day before boarding a boat. Others claimed he faked his death. One TikTok video zoomed in on a dark figure escaping the scene moments before the fire. Same boots, same walk. Caption, "You'd think he'd go out that easy?" Iris didn't speak. but deep underground in a hidden server room beneath DC. Her secure network lit up. A message blinked. He's SAFE. Phase 2 begins tonight. Day 5. The reveal phase. The final drop came suddenly. A whistleblower inside the Department of Defense posted an internal document, the full Echo Division plan. Not just TV, not just comedy. They had scripts for movies, songs, video games. A full psychological blueprint for mass distraction. The purpose of entertainment, it read, is to blur memory, blur morality, and keep the population in a state of comfortable confusion. One paragraph listed target emotions: humor, cynicism, apathy, mock empathy, tribal division. Use them to fog the mirror. It wasn't just propaganda, it was precision programming. People were outraged, not just at the government, but at themselves, at how easily they had laughed along. Day 6, the rebuild phase. New voices began rising. Not influencers, not politicians, just people. Teachers, veterans, students, workers. They called for the great unmasking. Street murals appeared in New York, Berlin, Tokyo. Giant portraits of Clint Eastwood, eyes burning. Below them, he didn't act, he remembered. Day 7. The rumor a leaked internal recording surfaced. From a secure CIA bunker, it's men talking. We lost control, and Eastwood, still breathing. Then finish it. But before it could be deleted, someone reposted it 10,000 times. The reckoning the final week began not with gunfire or bombs, but with a wave of silence. No laugh tracks, no comedy monologues, no late-night relief. The world had stopped laughing. Clint Eastwood's words, "I'm not done," still echoed across devices. The live stream had vanished, but millions had recorded it. Analysts tried to trace the location. I tried to fake it. But none could explain how a man declared dead was still speaking with that same cold steel in his voice. The public no longer cared where he was. They only cared why. They had never questioned any of it sooner. Day 8. The first media trial began. In a courtroom built for tax cases, The People vs. Network 12 was live-streamed worldwide. An executive producer, arms folded, sat before the panel. The prosecutor read aloud from a declassified Echo Division memo. Insert fear disguised as eyes comedy. Suppress empathy. Divide viewers by identity. Always punch down. Did you follow? These orders, the producer didn't deny it. We were told to. Was funding or death, not literal death. First, testimonies rolled in, writers, hosts, editors, even interns. They spoke of secret meetings, scripts rewritten overnight, jokes approved by the man on the 17th floor, a floor not listed on any blueprint by the end of the week. 4 top networks had collapsed. Their CEOs vanished. Their servers were seized. Day 9. The government cracked. A Senate hearing turned volatile as a forgotten cold. War official now in his 80s was forced to testify. He stood on shaky legs and said, "We never meant for it to go this far. We just wanted control." After Vietnam, after Watergate, we thought the people wouldn't believe us. Maybe they'd laugh with us, stop asking questions. He cried when he finished. No one applauded. Day 10. A final message was found. Buried inside the same flash drive Clint had used for the trigger file was a sealed video. Only Iris had the passcode. She released it. The footage showed a younger Clint Eastwood in 1990, shortly after Geneva. He was sitting in a quiet hotel room, hands folded, staring into the lens. They asked me once if I'd help them. I said no. They said I'd regret it. Maybe I did. Kept quiet too long. But truth has a way of waiting. He leaned forward. If this plays, it means the lie's over and you have to pick. Truth or comfort. You can't have both. Day 11. They called it the Great Switching Dash-Off. Millions deleted their streaming. App's late-night hosts resigned live on air, some in tears, others defiant. TV networks blacked out one by one. The people had taken their attention back. News came from neighbors, teachers, librarians. A nationwide campaign began. Verify before you laugh. They even reprinted newspapers. In ink, a slow rebuilding of trust brick by brick, day 12. The world searched for Clint. Rumors exploded. He was in Iceland. He was living in a monastery. One shaky photo showed him riding a horse in Montana, but one story spread faster than the rest. A child in Arizona claimed to have met an old man in boots who gave him a book. Inside was a note. Truth isn't loud, it waits. Keep listening. CE, the book was 1984. Day 13. Iris revealed herself. Her real name was Amira Hassan, a former intelligence linguist turned analyst. Fired after she questioned Echo Division's plans to use satirical skits against foreign populations. Her first public interview went live on a small, independent stream. They laughed at me when I said comedy was a weapon. They stopped laughing. Last week she warned that Echo Division wasn't dead, just wounded. Its people had scattered. Some were planning a comeback. Don't wait for another Clint, she said. Become your own. Day 14. A statue appeared overnight in Times Square. No plaque, no ceremony. Just a 12-foot figure cast in bronze, a man in a cowboy hat. One hand by his side, the other holding a folder. The base had just 3 words carved in stone. He remembered first. No one claimed responsibility. No one took it down. People brought flowers, and somewhere. In a cabin far beyond signal range, Clint sat quietly, watching a fire crackle in the hearth. He sipped his coffee, no smile on his face, just calm. On a dusty table sat the folder. He didn't need it anymore. The world had finally opened its eyes, and the last cowboy in America rode off into legend. The end.